Hi everyone, it's Joe here from Lawn Solutions Australia and welcome to this episode of Turf Talk. I'm lucky again to be joined by my colleague Nathan Edwards. Nathan, how you going?
Good, Joe. Thanks for having me again. We're back.
We're back. So what's going on today?
Well, obviously, Lawn Solutions Australia, one of the primary aspects of our business is bringing new turf varieties to market. We have a very extensive turf research and development program that we operate here based on the south coast of New South Wales, here near Berry. And I thought it'd be a good idea for us to basically run through step by step everything we have going on, the process involved in bringing those new turf grasses to market and everything that goes on here at LSA, a bit of a behind the scenes tour, if you will. Let's start. Where would you like to go from here?
So, yeah, no worries. That sounds really good. It's a pretty in-depth process that not a lot of people know exists. Grass is just grass to so many people, but the genetics and the development behind it is pretty full on. So before we go into our actual processes here in Berry, where our facility is, I'll just talk about it sort of from an overarching perspective. So what we do is part of our role is to find new and improved turf cultivars to eventually bring to market for domestic, for commercial, for the golf and sports turf world. And we don't have the means or facilities here in Australia to actually breed these turf grasses ourselves. So we rely on much larger breeding institutions, mainly out of the United States. A couple that we work with that come to mind are the University of Georgia, Texas A&M, and they're obviously universities. And there's a large private turf grass breeder called Blade Runner Farms who specialise a lot in zoysia grasses. And what these institutions do is actually cross new cultivars of turf. So they have gene guns and all sorts of wonderful machinery where they cross thousands and thousands of different cultivars of grass for specific reasons. The main reason they will breed new grasses is out of necessity to find low water use cultivars for drought. Most of their funding comes from drought-related studies, but obviously they do wear, they do shade, they do a whole host of things. And what they do is they breed tens and thousands of different varieties of turf grass in these big open fields that they have. And they use drones, NDVI, and all this wonderful technology, infrared technology, and they use this technology to score these grasses throughout different times of the year. And what happens eventually over time is your 30,000 becomes 20,000, becomes 10,000, becomes 100, becomes 20, 10, 5, and eventually 1. Where we come in is instead of doing this work ourselves, we're talking US millions of dollars annually into breeding these turf grasses, and they may not even find one, but when they do, with a big market like America, eventually they can get a pretty decent royalty income from it, so it's worthwhile them doing it. But like I said, where we come in is we build relationships with these universities, which is what we've done over the last 10 years or so, and we essentially write a list of traits that we would like the next lot of turf grasses to have. So, for example, it might be, hybrid couch grasses. We want them to be really wear tolerant and have excellent drought tolerance to handle our arid climate in Australia. It might be a buffalo grass where we'll say, hey, it needs to have exceptional cold tolerance. And what they'll do is they'll go, here's the best 10 grasses we have that fit the bill currently for that. What we do, which I'll go into in more detail a bit later on, is we then import into Australia and we do our due diligence here on them cultivars. And one of the places that we do that is the place that I'm about to go into more detail here, which is our R&D facility here in Berry. So that's a really long story in a really short amount of time. And I feel like I was talking fast there trying to get through it, but I think we gave everyone a pretty good picture of what's behind it.
And it is a big process, and the Americans do it best. They've got obviously golf is a massive industry in the US, a lot of money involved in golf, and that's an area where a lot of the funding comes from for turf research and improving golf courses over there. So by tapping into that market, into those dollars and forming relationships with those people in the US and elsewhere, we're able to bring to Australian consumers grasses that just wouldn't be feasibly possible in any other way. So it's quite interesting what we're able to do by bringing those over. Is there any particular, I guess in the last few years, what particular grasses have we been specialising in or what has come through in the quarantine process brought over from the US to Australia?
It's funny, most people think because of the makeup of the Australian turf industry that the bulk of the grasses that we'd import would probably be buffaloes or couch grasses, but by far and away the most common cultivar we import at the moment is zoysia grass. And it's not an overly popular grass in Australia right now, but because of the diversity in the genus of zoysia grass. For those who don't know, zoysia is the overarching species, and underneath that, I think there's 6 or 7 different types. You've got zoysia mitrella, japonica, pacifica, macrantha, tenuifolia, and so on. And because of the diversity in the genus, it is the best turf grass to actually breed with. So when you get, for example, Dr. Brian Schwartz, who bred Tiff Tough out of the University of Georgia, his program is sort of 65-70% zoysia grass because of the diversity in the genus. For this reason, people might have heard me say this before, but in the future, whether that's 10, 20, 30 years, the dominant cultivar, in my opinion, in Australia will be zoysia grass. And it's because of this reason, seeing the back end of it, so the behind-the-scenes look of it, and seeing how much work they put into zoysia. So, yeah, the bulk of the grasses we import for that reason are zoysia grass, but we've also just recently, which we'll go into, brought in a 17 new softleaf buffalo cultivars. So we do everything, but the focus is on zoysia.
On zoysia, and we just recently introduced Zoysia australis to market, which is a new Zoysia japonica.
Yes.
I guess, and that came out of that program and went through that whole process out of the US.
It did, yeah, and before that, Segrange zoysia, which is a zoysia mitrella, which has been in the market for more than 5 years now. It came out of this program, and also obviously Tiff Tough, which is a very prominent grass in the Australian turf market at the moment. It was a product of the Lawn Solutions Research and Development Facility. We started doing this in about 2012, and I think Tiff Tough came to market in 16, 17, somewhere around that. So it does take a long time to get through this, but you'll understand why once we start breaking down the mechanics of it shortly.
And these grasses, Tiff Tough, Segrange, Zoysia australis, these are the winners. These are the 1 in 40,000 genotypes that were created out of a lab in the US. So it's pretty special stuff. And to be able to have that in your home lawn in Australia after all these extensive years of process is pretty cool.
Yeah, and like Nath just said, that they're the winners of a big trial. And the frustrating thing about this is they may not have been the absolute prettiest, best performing grass in that trial, but you've got to understand, obviously they're right up there, but the frustrating thing is in turf grass research is you can find a wonderful grass that has so many wonderful benefits, looks great all year round, you put it into large scale production and you're trying to harvest it and it doesn't roll up, or it doesn't have, it can't be sprayed with common use turf herbicides, etc. There's so many reasons why grasses can fail, so that's why the process is frustrating. You get a small 1 square metre plot and you go, oh, grass 32 is unreal. It looks great. Let's put on a large scale production. Oh, it doesn't roll up. You can't spray it with this. You can't spray it with that. You rip it apart and you start again. So that's the reason why it does take so long. But eventually, with Australis, Segrange and Tiff Tough, just for example, we've found some pretty good ones. Pretty good ones so far.
So you were speaking before about moving on to buffalo grasses, or St. Augustines as we bring them over from the US is what they call them over there. New buffalo grasses, we had quite a few come into Australia recently in recent years.
Yeah, we brought about 5 across from Texas A&M in 2013. One of those is still going really good in our current trial, but we've brought 17 of them in during 2022. They got released out of quarantine of December 2022, so they've been planted since then. And the reason we've brought some more buffaloes in is obviously we've got a really good one in Sualter DNA certified, but there are limitations currently with buffalo grass. Not so much on the end user end, but more on the production end. Turf farms in cooler climates are finding it really hard to consistently produce a buffalo crop, efficiently. And there's also been a lot of instances of disease up and down the eastern seaboard of Australia. If you're in the industry, you might have heard of a thing called buffalo yellows, which is a prominent disease on farm. It doesn't generally transplant into the marketplace, but there's been a lot of issues on the production end. So that's been one of the reasons we're sort of running this investigation into buffalo. But the main reason is what all this comes back to is we're trying to find a grass that's not 1%, 2%, 3% better. That's 50% better than what's currently out there on the market. So we ring up our friends at Texas A&M who are professionals at this, Dr. Ambrika Chandra, and we say, hey, what do you got that's going to fit this bill? And we bring them into Australia, and that's what we've just done.
That's a really good example of I guess it's not just the end consumer, it's also, as Lawn Solutions Australia, as a national network of turf farms, we're working with a national network of locally owned, family-operated turf farms. They don't have the capacity to do this sort of work on their own, but as a network, as a big group, they're able to get access to these grasses, and they give us feedback on what's working and what's not working, and things that they're looking for, and we use that information to hopefully come up with better options for them for the future.
Yeah, there's so many stakeholders to sort of take into account when you're doing this sort of stuff. And not only is it the stakeholders, it's also the diversity of the Australian climate, which is a really difficult thing when you're a national company like we are. You don't want to bring 16 different grasses out for 16 different microclimates. You want to bring one grass out that suits all of Australia. So we're talking from Cairns to Melbourne to Perth to Broome and everywhere in between. We're looking for a grass that not only is great to produce, is great for the end user, but can also be taken Australia-wide. So it just adds another layer of complexity to what we're doing, but it's just another hurdle that we've got to jump over.
Absolutely. So it is a podcast episode, so you can't see actually what we have here at the Lawn Solutions Australia Research and Development Facility. But for those listening, I guess, can you give us a bit of an audio visual of what it is we have here at our primary facility here?
So we've got a fair bit of ground here to work with, not as much as we'd really like, but we do make good use of what we have, and we've got to cover as many bases as we possibly can. But to summarise it, there's two main sections of our R&D facility. The first one is obviously the research component, where all these grasses that we import into Australia, we have to propagate and analyse, and that process just goes on and on and on. So a lot of what we have here is literally 1 square metre plots of grass, and these are the best of the best from the university, so we don't have to have plots of 28,000 different grasses and big drones and that sort of thing. We've sort of got anywhere from 10 to 25 grasses in each plot zone. We replicate them and we analyse them, and we basically have a look at them, take drone shots, and we score them monthly throughout the year to get a good idea of what performs well in January, what performs well in June, and everything in between. So half the facility, I'll go into more detail in each part through this, but half the facility is about that. The other half is about putting these varieties on display for people to use, because we were originally 100% research, so plots all over it, and people would come along and have a look at it, and it was great, but they go, well, that grass is wonderful. And we'd have to tell them, sorry, you can't buy it. It's still a research cultivar. So what we decided to do is, once grasses came out of the other end of this program, we put them, we've actually built a small golf hole. And that's not just for us to enjoy our time on a Friday afternoon. There's actually a purpose behind it. We've put these grasses on display, so when people come and look at this facility, they can see, oh, that's what Segrange looks like at 10 mil. That's what it looks like unmown. This is how Tiftuff could possibly look in a home lawn environment or even on a fairway. This is how Australis creeps across the ground and how it looks. So they're the two major parts of what we've got here. There's also a turf farm based on the same site that we are as well. So we've got a Segrange, Tiftuff and Sir Walter display plot there as well, all in the same section. So whilst they're coming to look at our research, they can also look at what these grasses look like in a retail situation where they're just cut with a normal rotary mower. While I'm talking about that, we do look after these plots, pretty intensely, obviously, and this display section is nurtured really well. We've got permanent pop-up irrigation. We've got an excellent fertility and pest control and weed control plan, and we've got good equipment with Scarify. We've got good sharp cylinder mowers this grass gets looked after really well. But the research side of things, whilst we obviously look after it well, it's a bit more treat it like a normal average lawn consumer would, and that's a really important part of our research. Is every grass in the world looks $1 million when you put all the time and effort into it, but we want these grasses to stand out with minimal inputs, if that makes sense. So the first part, like I said, is our golf hole, and as you walk from start to finish, the golf hole is the first bit you come through. We've got pretty much mainly it's Segrange zoysia around the golf hole. We've got it now coming up 6 years unmown. You might have seen or heard us talk about this a little bit now, the benefits of unmown Segrange zoysia for difficult to maintain areas or areas that are possibly expensive to maintain. Like I said, it's 6 years here unmown now. It's about 30 centimetres high.
Wouldn't even reach your kneecaps.
It wouldn't even reach your kneecaps, no. And it looks fantastic. It looks great all year. And we've had a lot of success with this product now on things like council roundabouts, where It's difficult and expensive for council to maintain roundabouts because they've got to have safety measures, they've got to have traffic control in place. They put Segrange in, they water it to establishment, and they literally leave it. They do not do a thing to it. Cycle paths and other hard to maintain areas are great for Segrange. Steep batters are also good. So we have it on our golf course here, our display golf hole. Golf course, probably a bit of a stretch. It's a 30-metre golf hole. But we've got it here to show the contrast you can get in golf as well. It's a popular thing as well. Unknown Segrange around tee boxes and around bunkers and around greens. We've then got some manicured zoysia, Segrange zoysia at about 12 mil, I think. It's cut at now, 12 or 14 mil, to show mainly golf and also landscape. You can get beautiful contrast without changing grass types. You can have zoysia cut short, you can have zoysia unmown, and you get wonderful contrast. We've got a Tiff Tough fairway. That's again manicured and looking very, very good. It's a great cultivar for high use areas like golf fairways and the like. So we have that here at a variety of different heights to give people an idea. And then we've got a pretty unique golf green. We've got we've got a Primo zoysia golf green. Now Primo's still kind of a research cultivar, but I believe, and I could be wrong, and I probably am wrong because I'm normally wrong, but I think it would have been, if not one of the first zoysia grass golf greens in Australia. So for those that play a lot of golf, if you're sort of mid New South Wales and south, most of your golf greens will be what they call bent grass, which is a cool season grass. If you're north, they're probably Tiff Eagle or another type of dwarf couch grass. And the negative thing about bent grass, while it looks great on a golf green, is it's a cool season grass. So a lot of water, a lot of fungicide, that sort of stuff to keep it going. Zoysia grass has great disease tolerance, great drought tolerance, great shade tolerance, but they've finally got it where you can cut it into a golf green. So we've got a Primo zoysia golf green. That mean you actually plug planted one Friday afternoon?
Yeah, we did.
Terrible day.
I think people might be interested to learn a little bit about Primo in the reason why we don't specifically release it to the domestic market. I guess because it is a greens grade grass, the traits of the grass is that it needs to be maintained in a certain manner. Not to say that it's high maintenance, but it's built for purpose, for that function, for a really low height. And in a domestic setting, unless you're a golf course superintendent and you're using all the best of the best products and you're maintaining it on a daily basis to the extent that it needs to have that absolute perfect finish, it's never going to achieve what it's designed to achieve in a home lawn setting unless you do all those things. So it would be really expensive for a domestic lawn, and it's not feasible for a lot of people to do that.
Yeah, it's a really important point. A lot of people come here and they see it because it looks so good and they go, oh, I want that stuff in my backyard. But they don't understand the negative things that can happen when it's not looked after like a golf course is or a golf green is. And we actually get this all the time. A customer will go, hey, can I just have the grass that's on my local golf course because it looks fantastic on my local golf course. I want it to look like that. Sure, just employ 4 full-time staff and cut it 5 times a week and it'll look that way. So you've got to put a bit of thinking around that when it comes to that. But yeah, Primo zoysia, the reason it's not released widely, even though it gets a lot of positive things said about it and it looks great, is for exactly what you just said. It just takes too much work.
Yep. So we've got the display plots. We've got grasses that are under trial and assessment that have gone through the quarantine program, the zoysias, the St Augustines, the buffaloes, the couch grasses. From there, what else do we have?
So we've got a hothouse, small hothouse here that houses basically the pots when we get them straight out of quarantine. They got quarantine tags on them, so that takes up a little bit of room. We like to keep original stock of everything we import over the years, even if it never makes it to market. It's nice to have something on a backup where you can always draw pure parental, is that the right word? Parental stock? Anyway, pure foundation stock, that's probably a better word. Mick Sutton from AUSGAP would have my head for getting that wrong, but we can get pure foundation stock from this 8-inch pot that we get out of quarantine. We'll talk a little bit more about that a bit later on, but from that we have our research or our analysis plots where they're actually 1 square metre plots of each grass that we take out of quarantine. We section off an area. Let's say it was, zoysia grasses we imported in 2017 or buffalo grasses we imported last year. We'll section off an area and we will put square metre plots of each cultivar we bring in, but it won't just be one of each. We will replicate that 2, 3, in the case of the buffaloes, 4 times. The reason we do more than one replicate is because there's a lot of variables in our setup here. We've got a big shed next to us. We've got a little bit of shade. So if you have one grass that's getting beautiful full sun and reflective heat off the shed and the other one's sitting down in a partially shaded area, we might favour the one that's sitting in the full sun, when it may not actually be a better grass. So we do like to replicate them in the pattern that we do. So we're getting an average of the 4 replicas when it comes into scoring. So the zoysia part of our program here, this is the program or the trial, the set of grasses that Australis came out of. So we have, I think it's 17 different types of zoysias we imported in 2017, and we've got 3 replicates of that trial sitting up there. And from that point, the part of that program towards the end of that's what Zoysia Australis came out of. So the good thing about the Zoysia trial up there is there's 17 different grasses, and you can tell there is 17 different grasses.
Yeah, very different.
They look so different, and they all look different, better and worse at different times of the year. But that trial, whilst it's not totally null and void, it's kind of just sitting idle at the moment because we found Australis. And Australis wasn't the best grass 24/7, 365, but it was always top 3. It was so consistent, and it grew really well across the ground. It's a great production grass. It's really good in the shade, and it's a beautiful looking bluey green sort of leaf.
Looks really nice.
It looks great for those who haven't seen it. It's well worth checking out. Moving on from that, we go to our buffalo trial, which is really new and exciting. We planted these on the first day of summer last year, so December 1, 2022. We plant all of these from sprig because we have such little material. We plant straight from sprig. We put a bit of pre-emergent down. They go straight under irrigation, and we look after them. We treat them pretty mean, actually, when you think of it. Yeah, all things considered. So much work's gone into these grasses, but we keep them really lean. We don't baby them. We don't fertilise them too much. We mow them with a rotary mower, and we take initially we leave signs in so we can see what cultivars they are. But whilst we go through our research and our scoring phase, we actually take the signs off so there's no preconceived idea when you're going to score.
Yep.
I think that's a pretty important.
You start to learn the scientific names and numbers assigned to them pretty quickly, so it's important that you're not looking for that grass. That
people develop favourites.
They do.
Yeah. And even though there's 17 different ones, I know you're always looking to see how one certain one is performing because you might have heard a bit about it overseas, for example, or someone sort of talking it up a bit. But we want to have a blank slate when we go to scoring.
Absolutely.
We want to pick genuinely what's the best grass.
So 95% of the grasses in these trials are the grasses that have come over in the import, but we also include some grasses that we currently have on the market. So Walter would be in the buffalo trial for comparison purposes as well.
Yeah, so we always put in what we're trying to beat. I guess it's a really important point is even the zoysias, we'll throw zoysias that are currently on the market in that trial too. With the buffalo trial, so I guess, look, summarising it, we are trying to find a grass that is significantly better than what's on the market, which is Sewalter DNA certified. That is the goal of the trial. If we don't find anything, the trial's not a failure. We know then that Sewalter DNA certified is the best buffalo grass currently on the market available in the world. Now, out of the 17 grasses that we brought in, I think there's only one of them that's commercially available anywhere in the world. So these are brand new crosses. And just while we're talking about buffalo grasses, I had the privilege to go to the US in February this year to visit Texas A&M and go through Dr. Chandra's research program, and the capital and the equipment that they have there now will absolutely blow your mind. This isn't just crossing grasses out there in a field and hoping they sort of run into each other and form a mutant. This is high level stuff. They've got gene guns there now, so people are probably familiar with GMO when it comes to food, genetically modified organics. I think that's right.
I think so.
Sounds right. It has a bit of a bad name when it comes to food, but you're not eating turf grass. So it's actually a really, really good thing for it. So they're actually getting, I'm putting someone who's done 25 years of research and has a PhD, and I'm trying to summarise it. It's probably not going to come off real well, but gene guns, what they can actually do now is they can pick a drought-tolerant plant. Like let's take wheat, for example, a really drought-tolerant plant. They can extract the gene out of the wheat, and they can actually, through a gene gun, inject that gene into a good-looking turf grass in the hope that they breed drought tolerance of wheat into that turf grass. Now, the success rate of that actually happening is super, super low. That's why they have so many different crosses and they have to put so much work into that. And then with all the new drone technology, the great thing about turf grass research, not so much for us, our drones just take photos, but they have infrared drones and NDVI drones and that sort of thing. Drones that spray. They got lots of cool stuff. It takes it from research from being subjective to being quantitative. It's not just Joe thinks this grass is a 9 out of 10 and Nathan thinks that grass is an 8 out of 10. It's what does the data tell us? And that's a really, really impressive thing about what happens over there now. So we're 6 months in to our buffalo trial, but we're just getting to the exciting bit. And the exciting bit is drone shots during winter. We also put measuring devices, they're actually really cheap basic flags, but we put them in at certain types of the year to see how these grasses grow laterally over the winter months, because winter activity and winter colour is a really important part of this trial. So our drone shots over these months and our growth markers are two important things that we're doing here with the buffaloes.
And that's all on warm season grasses, and obviously they do go into a certain level of dormancy, but it's seeing how they perform, how they hold up, and how active they're going to remain through that period, which is important for both turf growers and the end consumer.
Yeah, and how good they look compared to Sir Walter is I guess the main thing we're looking at.
Yeah,
we pretend that we're not by taking the names of things, but we kind of know which one's Sir Walter, so we're always looking in. The exciting thing at the moment is there's two exciting things. One is all the grasses are performing differently. And buffalo grasses are very, very similar genetically, but they're performing differently. And we're seeing stark differences now heading into winter, which shows research is working, which is cool. And the second thing is, whilst Sir Walter's doing really, really well, there are some grasses that are looking really, really impressive up against Sir Walter. So, 5, 10, 15 years down the track, there might be a new big dog in the turf world, and it might come out of this buffalo trial, which is cool to think about.
Especially, yeah, absolutely. It's something we don't want to rush because it's important that we do understand all of the things that can go into it before it's released to market, and that's what we pride ourselves on, is making sure that we release grasses that are the bee's knees, I guess, and that the results that we've seen through our trials over many, many years is replicated in the home lawn situation.
So I guess the next bit that we do, that we have in our research facility, the next section of our facility, moving on from what Nath said, is dedicated to, I guess you'd call it competitor or industry analysis. So we get these grasses out of our research program, and they might be the best grass in that trial, but we have to see how they stack up against other grasses in that segment that are currently available in the industry. We have to get data from that so we know ourselves how they perform. But then if we've got a grass that's significantly better than everything else in the industry, we need to be able to tell that story. And we need to have good evidence to back up our claims when it comes to that. And this was a prominent thing when Tiff Tough got released. We saw the science, we saw the research firsthand, and we were blown away with how good Tiff Tough actually was. But we need trials set up to document that story and to be able to tell it to people, because it's a really important thing. Obviously, research and development is super important, but we don't hide the fact that we have to sell this grass too, and we have to show people that this grass has so many wonderful environmental and economical benefits over the other ones in the industry. So that's what this section is set up for, competitor analysis. With these competitor analysis trials, we don't just stand there and look at them. We do shade, we do drought, and we do wear trials. We renovate them, we see what comes back quickest from renovation. We do a little bit of this ourselves, but we also engage the services of independent research companies, one being STRI, or the Sports Turf Research Institute. It's very hard when you're involved you're financially involved with the cultivar. You need independent research. You can't rely solely on the stuff that you do. So we outsource a lot of that to the team at STRI, and they run a lot of these trials themselves, which you may or may not have seen. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out. But these competitor analysis trials are funny. Whilst these grasses look so similar at some times of the year, there is such stark differences at different times of the year. And take the couch grass one, for example. We've got 7 different couch grasses in our competitor analysis trial, I believe now, and all these couches look unreal in January and February. They all look fantastic. Some grow a little bit quicker, some put a little bit more seed head out, etc., but they all look good. The cream's starting to rise to the top now when it comes to winter colour. The difference is mind-blowing.
You put that drone up the other day, and like you said with the buffaloes, we did it with the couch grasses, and it's absolutely amazing, the difference between them.
It's incredible. And the thing is, with all these new couch grasses that come to the market, all these new hybrids, they're all good grasses. These universities do not breed and release a grass unless it's a good grass. But
it's reputation for them as well.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely. So they're all great, but it's it's good seeing that the grass that you've picked in your research is stacking up and is standing up really well. And TIFTUF's doing that.
Independent turf trials through STRI gives us the confidence to know that, okay, we're on the right track here.
Yes.
The results that we've achieved have been replicated by an independent party who's a global institution whose bread and butter is testing grasses.
That's right.
Finding the cream of the crop. So
we're actually seeing a lot of people do this stuff in their own backyards now, which is
a little bit of that, yeah.
which is cool that people are so interested in it. They'll see a new grass come out and they'll go, oh, hey, I've got couch grass number 1. How about I try couch grass number 2 and 3, and I'll put them in my own backyard and I'll take some photos and I'll tell people about it. So it's not dissimilar to what we do here, but we do it across all cultivars, and we have the means in the area to do that, which is great. Moving back to what we were speaking about before, about our hothouse and our genetic material of our foundation stock. So this is a really, really important part of what we do. For those of you that have been able to come here, you would have seen the hothouse and you would have seen the 8-inch pots that we have with quarantine tags on them. So let's take the 17 buffaloes we were speaking about before in our trial. When they get imported into Australia, they have obviously go through some rigorous processes to make sure they transported safe and they're free of pathogens, etc. They come into quarantine in a small, basically washed Ziploc bag, and then once they go into quarantine, they put them in an 8-inch pot. They test them for pathogens, they boil them, they spray them, they do all this wonderful stuff. And at the end of the quarantine process, which is a very drawn out and very expensive process, we get an 8-inch pot or a 6-inch pot of this grass to work with, and that is it. The next process is critical. It is so important. There's so much time and money being invested into this 8-inch pot of grass that we've brought into Australia. The last thing we want to do is stick it somewhere where it doesn't get watered and it really, really struggles. But when we start to propagate these grasses, and then when we start to sell them and they become commercially available, maintaining genetic purity is so important. Let's take TIFTUF, for example. We keep referring back to it, but it's a walking, talking example of this. There is over 700 hectares of TIFTUF currently in production in Australia. In 2013, that all came out of one 8-inch pot.
Wow.
So it's a really important job to make sure that 700th hectare is the same grass that came out of that 8-inch pot in 2013.
So if you've got a TIFTUF lawn in Cairns, it came from that 8-inch pot.
That 8-inch pot at some stage. And maintaining purity, because grasses produce seed, they produce runners, and they can cross-pollinate and cross-contaminate really, really easy. So keeping this process clean is so important. And whilst research is one part of it, once we bring this grass to market, making sure we tick these boxes is another really, really important part of it. And that's why we engage the services of companies like AUSGAP. And AUSGAP is so important in maintaining genetic purity and also the quality of grasses that's grown in on farm. And it's a really important part of this process.
Absolutely. And we're actually lucky. And we've got Michael Sutton. He runs the AUSGAP program here in Australia for ensuring the genetic purity of grasses. So he'll explain the process that they undergo and what's involved. So I'll hand over to Mick Sutton.
So thanks for joining us, Mick. And as we just spoke about, Mick's a representative, the program manager for AUSGAP. Now, AUSGAP is the Australian Genetic Assurance Program, and it is so important in our industry to maintain genetic purity and maintain high quality when it comes to producing turf and also propagating turf. And AUSGAP is the Australian arm of what's called ICGAP, which is the International Turfgrass Genetic Assurance Program. And part of what we do adheres to what they do internationally, but AUSGAP is an exclusive agent for ICGAP, which is, I think, the only one in the world, aren't you?
Sure.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about how AUSGAP sort of came into this and what obligation AUSGAP has to places like ICGAP?
Sure, Joe. Thanks for having me. It's ICGAP, is the overseeing body, as you've said. So, for instance, Lawn Solutions wanted to have Sir Grange and TIFTUF as an obligation for the university, the breeders of those varieties. You need to have a certification program in place. So, from that, AUSGAP was sort of thrown up because there's a lot of growers in your network of LSA, which was going to be way too big for ICGAP to oversee themselves because generally they're based in America, obviously. They have 1 or 2 farms in Europe and North and South South America, in Asia, that type of thing. So it's easier for them to see them. But here in Australia, with the 59 growers farms, you got over the 48 growers. It was just way too hard for them to manage. So AUSGAP was formed, and I oversee that and do a little bit of Asia as well. So it's it's quite.
And what's the process look like? Obviously, it's a big job. We're talking farms. We're not talking backyards here.
Correct.
We're talking hundreds and hundreds of acres. So what's it look like? Again, we'll use the Tiff Tough example, but what's it look like when we start to propagate Tiff Tough from the pot to the farm, to 1 farm, to 5 farms, to 10 farms, to 20 farms? So how does that sort of setup work?
So basically, after you guys do your research, which AUSGAP has to be part of as well because of the requirements and oversee the expansion, it goes to 2 nominated foundation farms that we have in Australia, which is one in Sydney and one in Queensland. It's their job to multiply that into production size fields.
That's a foundation field.
That foundation field, yes, correct. Yeah. So we have a foundation farm, which are foundation fields. So there's only 2 foundation fields in Australia of Tiff Tough, for instance. Right. We're using Tiff Tough. It's a big process, and from there the foundation material gets distributed to the other growers within the network that use that.
So
material.
if I'm Joe's Turf Farm and I'm a member of Lawn Solutions and I want Tiff Tough, I go in the first instance to the foundation farm.
Well, you go to AUSGAP, and then AUSGAP will go, I know how much I've got at the foundation farm in southeast Queensland. We know how much we've got in Sydney, and we work out with those foundation farms where that's going to go, whether it goes to South Australia, Western Australia, Northern Territory, all over the country.
And that's how I can be sure I'm getting genetically pure
Correct.
stock.
Yes, because those farms, they are inspected quarterly by the inspectors in AUSGAP. We have to go there quarterly to make sure that it is what it's saying. We look at the morphology of the plant, make sure the characteristics are what they say they are.
Yep. So that it's the best of the best when it comes to purity, essentially.
100%.
These foundation farms are, and then to distribute throughout the Lawn Solution network, each farm goes to that foundation farm.
Yes, they do.
Their stock. And when they do buy their foundation stock, what's their obligation then? Even before they plant.
They got a set of standards. So that we do turf standards and turf production standards and business standards. So they need to have certain biosecurity measures, environmental stewardship and standards in place. They also need to have, all their WHS programs in place, all that sort of thing. It's a pretty full in-depth program.
It's not just turf.
No, it's not just turf. It's making sure these farms. We've just done another two growers recently in the last 6 months that have gone through the process, and it seems a lot, but when we sit down and we nut it out, they go, "Oh, really? It's not that bad." We've got most of them have got most of the stuff in place anyway. So,
and I guess there's a fair bit of traceability when it comes to this too. So if we've got an issue with a certain grass, you can trace back Joe's Turf, for example. He got his from Foundation Farm number 1, and you can locate that a bit easier there.
So the thing that probably say we've got a pyramid, I suppose, is the best way to put it. So we have the foundation, which is from those 2 farms, and then when it goes from there, they're only allowed to multiply twice. So, right. So we're trying to stop the genetic pool and trying to keep the integrity of the genetics of the.
It's not open slather.
No, you don't want. We've had turf grass. We won't go into what their varieties are. I know, being in the industry for so long, we've had turf varieties that, we don't know if that's what it was because it had been multiplied and multiplied and multiplied on the same stock over and over again, and it lost its genetic purity and all the integrity of its original characteristics and morphology.
So what you're saying there is there's grasses in the market now, which are wonderful grasses, has been out for a long time, but because they haven't had a program like this in place, there's no way of ensuring that actual grass.
100%. That's being involved in what I was, we had the same variety every year at the stadium I was at, and by the 3rd time we replaced it was a completely different to what I originally put in. And so this is just to stop that. So we get to the registered, and then each grower can multiply on that twice, which becomes their certified. They can't expand from there. They can sell it commercially to jobs, whatever they need to do, but that's it. We won't let them multiply from there again.
If they want to expand beyond that, they've got to go back and buy foundation stock?
Yes, if they want to expand, past those 2 times from the registered, they have to go back to the foundation.
Very stringent process, isn't it? Yeah, and it's so important. And then you talked before 68 farms across, or 58 farms across 48 members, or whatever you said. So you actually inspect these farms, like you actually walk these farms?
Biannually, yes.
Biannually. So what's that process involved?
So what we do is we make a list of what we got. Obviously, we have farm maps, so we've got an idea of volume. So we try and get to every turf field we can in both inspections per year.
Physically walking paddocks.
Yeah. So physically walking, looking at stolon growth, looking at leaf growth, using sun behind you to see different turf varieties within. I was in southeast Queensland a couple of years back. We had E11 inspector across, and I turned over my shoulder to talk to him. And when I turned over my shoulder, I seen a grey patch, and it was an off type in the. And
wow.
I seen, that's the thing. It was just a certain time of the day and the right light, and I picked out something. It was just by sheerly, turning to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
So.
Obviously, everything's not perfect. You do find off types.
Yep.
When Tiff Tufts, Grange, other grasses you inspect. What's the process like when you find something that doesn't quite look right? And what do you often look for? Is it seed head? Is it colour? Is it?
Seed head's a great thing, but the best thing to find off type is first thing in the morning when you got the dew. So what we do is we actually flag it. It's either eradicate, or if it's something that sometimes I'm not sure. Sometimes it could be just something a little bit different, and I flag it with a different colour flag. Mm-hmm. They don't harvest from that area.
Yeah, wow. So it's so important what you do, but it's really, really serious. And I guess so that's the purity side of thing. But you actually make sure the crop is free of weed, disease, and pests. I got that right?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. It's so in depth, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, it's a really interesting story. If you do want to learn more, you can check out ausgap.com.au, or you can jump on their socials as well. And it's so important for our industry, the work that Mick and the team at AUSGAP do. So I hope you got a little bit more insight, everyone, from that. And I'd just like to thanks Mick for coming on and explaining that process.
Thanks for having me. And as Joe said, we've got plenty of information on the website, so go and have a look.
Great. Thanks, Mick.
Thanks, Mick, for that. That was really interesting to hear. And us in the industry, obviously, we work pretty closely with AUSGAP to ensure that our varieties are pure, and it's so important. If we're putting out a grass and saying it's Tiff Tuff, for example, or Grange or Australis, it's just so important that we make sure that is indeed what customers are getting. Yeah,
when it comes to AUSGAP and R&D, you can't have one without the other. They both complement each other really, really well, and like we've sort of said, it's so important to ensure that the investment that goes into these varieties is maintained from the time they leave this research centre to the time they get planted in farms around Australia. So it's a bit of a longer chat than normal, that one, but we felt like we had a lot to cover off on. We hope we gave you all a bit more of an in-depth view into what goes on behind the scenes in the turfgrass world and into our R&D program. If you ever did want to check out our facility in Berry, it is actually open to the public 5 days a week. Nathan loves coming in on Sundays. Joe's Tours. Nathan's available on Sunday from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. if anyone wants him to. If anyone does want to come in, please get in touch with us. Like I said, we're a couple of hours south of Sydney in a town called Berry, and you can check out this program in the flesh. We also hold a couple of open days throughout the year, which will be advertised on our socials and on our website if you wanted to come in. Anything else on this?
I think that's it. I guess a key takeaway from hearing from Mick Sutton as well is just that, if you're looking to buy turf, make sure it is AUSGAP certified. Without it, you just don't have that assurance, and that's why we ensure that all Lawn Solutions Australia members are AUSGAP certified and all their turf varieties are certified grasses. So key takeaway from that, and it sort of is the foundation of everything we do to make sure we're bringing new and improved varieties to Australian consumers. So I think that covers it.
Great point. Well, thanks, Nath. Thanks to Mick Sutton from AUSGAP for coming on as well. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. And we'll catch you all next time. Thanks.